There we go. Okay. So tonight we're going to talk about something that might not seem related to pain care, but for those of you that have joined, you probably have some inkling that that boundaries um, in the way that we might understand them are intricately related to pain care. Your pain exists in your body, in your brain. That's a fact. And we know that all the ways that we can harness to look after ourselves and bring self care and uh, sometimes relaxation, sometimes movement into our world is helpful. And boundaries make all that possible. So that's what we're going to dive into tonight. So before we get in here, I'm going to just stop the share, say hello to Mark,
Yeah.
say hello to everyone here. Okay, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, and thank you for
Oh,
coming on.
I can't hear. I can't. I think you're either
Oh,
on. You're not on mute, but maybe it's your microphone.
oh, okay. Does that work?
Uh, are other people hearing Mark? It might be
Can,
me actually.
can you
I've
hear
got a
me?
new set of headphones on here. Are you guys
Oh,
hearing Mark? Oh,
oh,
okay.
there we go.
It's me.
I could say something, but I won't.
What do you mean? Yeah, leaky motor.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you now, very faintly.
Leak, leaky boat, yes.
We're going to talk about leaky boats tonight, and
hmm
where our boats are leaking. So I'll
Mm,
just ask Mark to get us going here, and we'll dive right
sure.
in.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks, Madeline, for hosting this webinar this evening on boundaries and how it pertains to pain and chronic pain. Something we don't often think about, you know. But again, very, very important and sort of also sort of establishing a sense of self and our own, space and respecting ourselves. So thank you very much for putting this on and just welcome to everybody on behalf of the Bill Mounds Pain and Research Center. Um, if you have questions, then the chat is a great place to put them. And we just ask that everybody, just respects one another's confidentiality and that it's a safe space in which to ask questions or pose comments. And other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Madeline. Thanks very much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. I'll just start sharing in a few minutes. So this is something that I've been diving into more and more, and different ways of being able to maintain some sense of control over our environment, particularly as we're heading into the holidays. Some people experience more stress or feel more demands on them, on their time, their energy. And it might be particularly true this time of year. But this is really something that we want to become conscious of throughout the year. And as Cynthia said there, leaky boat, yes, because we're going to talk about where our boats are leaking. So hopefully you can all still see me in my little square and you can see the slides here. I'll keep half an eye on the chat as we move along. And I also have come to see that boundaries apply to so many things. They not only apply to how we speak up in our own lives, but also how we sometimes pursue our own medical care, determining what feels right for us, what doesn't. Um, how we actually say yes and receive, and also how we say no. And there's 1,000 different ways to say no, because sometimes we move into these conversations and feel, or we've been told, you just got to say no, just nope, just no. And but it turns out sometimes that is in fact the case. And are you saying a really believable no, as if you mean it? And um, or is there something else that makes more sense to you? No, thank you. Not right now. I'll get back to you later. Yes, I'd really like to do that. No, that doesn't interest me at all. And all of these ways point back to how honest we're being with ourselves and how truthful we might be with other people, and how much we are listening into our own true self. I'll say that's all I'll say for now. You'll see as we go along. So the question is, where in your life right now? And you can just think about this to yourself, or you can pop it in the chat. Do you know right now where it feels a little muddy, where it doesn't feel clear, where you've got an email you still have to answer, or there's something coming up and you don't really want to go, but you said yes, or there's something, an ongoing situation that you haven't spoken up about yet. Because if there is, I'm going to invite you to no longer allow yourself to uh, to sit with resentment. So, Gina, you keep getting disconnected. You are on the live class. You're in the right class. Is anybody else here experiencing disconnection? And then we can figure out if it's me or if it's you. How's everybody else doing? Anybody else losing me? No? Connection? Okay. So, Gina, there might be something going on there with your internet. If you want to maybe get closer to your router, check your internet connection, but you're in the right place anyway. So, I was disconnected, but I'm back now. Okay. I don't know what's going on out there in the Zoom world, but hopefully we can make it through this hour together as best as we can. So, keeping things in your life where you feel resentful, where that person, once again did that thing, and you're getting those words stuck in your throat and they're not coming out in a way that is helpful for you, or that that person is going to hear it, can really add to the tension that you're holding inside your body. And we sometimes don't know how much relief we're going to get when we finally say the thing that's been sitting heavy on your heart. So, right now, just take an inventory of your own life and just see where those points are that it's something that has been sitting there for a long time. Okay, so it might be, work related. It might be relationship related. It might be friend related, neighbor related. And now that you've kind of brought that out into the room on the table, let's just take a moment and do what we do best when we're living with ongoing pain. And that is taking our 3 deeper, slower breaths. So just start, everybody, with taking an inhale. This is probably the most important slide of the whole night. And as you exhale, as best as you can, relax your jaw and your shoulders. Maybe even let those muscles relax a little bit in your legs if you feel like you're ready to run somewhere. Feel your feet on the ground as you inhale again together. Exhale, let gravity relax your jaw, your eyes, your forehead. Settle into your space where you're touching maybe your feet on the floor or and your seat, or where your back's holding you on the bed, it's touching the bed. And one last one, just a nice deep, or I should say slower breath. Just a slow breath. And with this one, you can let out a sigh or just a ah and release your day. Release your day. Just let that burden go and release your day. And as best you can, put yourself in a place where in your body at this point in time is the most comfortable for you at 6:10 in the evening on December 9th. And it'll be different an hour from now. So whether you need to lean forward, back, whether you need to adjust your lights or get a drink of water, all of this feeds back into looking after this body. So the question, where are your energetic leaks? And this is just kind of we're recording, so it's something you can always come back to. It's just kind of get a general survey and something might be sticking out for you. So where you feel like you want to tighten up on your time, how you're spending your time. This could be an internal boundary or an external boundary. Freeing up more time for the things that you love, less time for the things that drain you, which is drains our energy, makes us tired and stressed, and then wondering why we haven't tightened up. Maybe it's your space. Maybe you're not getting enough time by yourself, and you need more time, more quiet time, or maybe you feel like you need to have more people in your space. Maybe there's something or a person or a place that you want to go to have a little bit more activity, more socialization. Notice if there's something about speaking up to people, even to health professionals, say, this part isn't quite working for me. Can we try something else? Or there's maybe you're speaking to your physio and maybe you want more exercises to do. So maybe there's something that you're able to tweak there. Doing something that you don't want to do. Maybe you have a tradition at Christmas and it's like, this is what we do. This is the thing we do. This is the tradition, and it's important to other people, but it's less important to you. Feeling obligated to do things and not appreciated. So those are just some of the things that can drain us and sap us of energy. And when we have less capacity in our mind and our body, we're not feeling well rested, or we're feeling drained or tight, it does contribute to more of a tense muscles, tense body, and increase our pain. So let's just look just generally again, some particular signs that perhaps there's an area where you need to start learning about healthy boundaries. Maybe you're angry at having too much to do, too much on your plate. And part of that just might be stress that there are things you have to do, and it requires an internal boundary, an inner boundary to say, okay, I'm going to pace myself and do 2 or 3 things today, 2 things tomorrow. And so that's an inner boundary on yourself to maybe it's around procrastination, or you're feeling like there's too many demands on you, and you have the right to then say, not right now, or I can't do that. or, that's not going to happen. So these statements can make such a world of difference. Maybe you dread the phone ringing because it might be that person that you don't want to talk to, and that person that drains you, or just somebody might need you, and your tank is empty because you haven't had the time to fill it up. Maybe you're anxious about other people. Okay, here's a good one. You're worried that maybe you're not being, a good friend at Christmas, or you're worried that someone is not happy with you, or that you've disappointed them, or are you going to disappoint them. This kind of energy, it doesn't, unless there's something you can do about it, it doesn't really go anywhere. And it doesn't really have anything else to do aside from worry. And we know that nobody wants to worry, especially when we've got things that we want to put our energy into. We want to put energy into health and vitality and looking after ourselves. So here's something that, for all of you people that are super nice, and there's many of you here, probably all of you are really nice people. Um, it, it might be hard to say this, but bear with me. If you don't know the answer, if you're wondering, what does that person think of me? And you don't know the answer, sometimes you can just tell yourself, I don't know. I don't care. I don't know. I don't care. Doesn't mean you don't care about the person. You care about the person. But in this moment, I am not going to spend time caring about what they may or may not think of me. And that's an inner boundary. That's an inner boundary on your own thoughts. Maybe you got some upcoming stress, or some events you're feeling stressed about, and that's impacting you day to day. Maybe you're worried that you're going to get exhausted, and you need to think about where you want to spend your energy. Plan ahead, and make sure you're pacing yourself. Make sure you are making time for self-care, for relaxation ahead of time, so we can preempt these things from making pain worse. With pain, maybe you don't enjoy being around other people like you used to. Maybe it's not enjoyable for you, or you can only do it for small periods of time. Or maybe you miss people around this time of year that you used to hang out with. These are all such valid ways to feel. And you might spend some time just, looking after those emotions that you're feeling. And then moving forward with a way an amount of energy that feels right for you. You're allowed to do this. So also, if you look at your week and you just want to go to sleep, like you just want to go back to bed, it might require a few adjustments there. You got to give yourself some grace. Or even the thought of saying no to someone creates a mountain of guilt. I can't possibly say no to that. Well, you can, and people will survive. I promise you. Um, and if they don't survive in your life, then that's probably a relationship that maybe wasn't based in a healthy dynamic. Or maybe it's just hard to ask for help. All right. So that's a load of things, but just to kind of get your juices flowing here. I just want to just take a check here, and just, if you have something that you're dealing with, pop it in the chat and we can speak into it. Okay. So Lynn, you know exactly what the stress is going to be. Okay. Just lost his job. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we can talk about, I think the days for you guys of allowing yourself to be disrespected are coming to a close, because every single one of you, nobody deserves to be talked to in a disrespectful way. And if you have been allowing that to happen, I'm going to invite you to make a big change and to think about that and start addressing it because it leaves you, of course, in a helpless and a stressed state. And as or if it does happen, it is really good to have a couple of statements in your back pocket to address it on the spot. So sometimes when you're prepared for it, you're not afraid of it. You know, you could even welcome it because you know what you're going to say, and you want to take this as an opportunity to practice. But sometimes people can sense that energy and the pattern starts breaking apart on its own. But when you really own that and you say, the days of me being disrespected are over, they're over. And this is what I expect. These are my standards now. You can start to really shift the dynamic. Emotions and coldness. Yes. Yeah. So, care for my 88, so looking after an older parent and have two siblings living just across the road and get no help, no support or help. Okay. Yeah. So I can see, in the situation where you've got a lot to do and you're not getting any help, that some resentment is going to build. Yeah. And elderly parents are not always keen on respite care. Okay. Mm. So yeah, that sounds like a lot on your shoulders. And I suppose there's a number, depending on the dynamics, and a number of different approaches to say to let people know, let people in that this is no longer. Sometimes we get really good at tolerating situations that are making us reach our capacity at trying to deal with, a pain condition at the same time. And so it's like that frog in boiling water. If you ever heard about that, like how a frog, when you slowly heat up water, it can survive in really hot water. And but if you just plunk it into hot water, it won't survive. So we get really used to being in situations that are intolerable and unacceptable. And so I hope tonight you might get some clarity around that and some ways that you might be able to approach that, because that's such a great example of something that is going to affect your energy, your health, your pain, just the way you feel with or without pain, but even more so when you have to be looking after yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you deserve it. You need it for you. Yeah, absolutely. The respite. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. Sometimes that can be absolutely it, Gina. We're kind of ticking along, and we think we're doing okay, but again, it's like the frog in boiling water. Things are starting to, and then we get one thing, the straw that breaks the camel's back, and the body starts to say, no, it's too much, and we get so used to being at those. We get so used to suffering that we accept suffering. Some of it is just comes along with the territory. And then other things we might not know, or we're just in a place where when our defenses are down because of pain, we can be in survival for so long that it's hard to get the energy to do something different, right? So you're definitely not alone in that. But boundaries are I've come to see over the decades if they really are the root of self care. From small boundaries saying it's time for me to have my bath, or boundary on self. I'm taking my medication and doing what I say that I'm going to do at a certain time. I'm going to rest. Really, our self care. They're clearly expressed needs and expectations that help you to feel safe. And safe meaning comfortable, not resentful. Obviously, if you're in an abusive or not good situation, these rules don't apply because those situations you need to leave. So anything aside from that, we're talking about tonight. So because we live, breathe, and grow in relationships. So safety is safety in terms of being able to say what you feel is paramount. And it certainly doesn't mean that it's always easy, peaceful and easy. We're going to talk about that. Strong boundaries can survive the storms better. They can survive the upheavals. They can survive the holidays in a way that says, I need to look after myself first in a way that feels good for me. Because if it's not good for us, then we're not going to be good with other people and in our relationships with others. And they actually create better and closer relationships. Or the converse, if we start setting boundaries, you can tell me what you think. And the people around you, initially, there's going to be some waves as you start to shift. That's naturally going to happen. If people start to really protest and they don't like it, then that's good information. That's good information for you about the relationship. So learning to say no, when to say yes, is an essential part of any relationship and the relationship with yourself. So how does it feel when you're saying yes, 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 when your body says no? When you're keep on doing what you're doing and your body is saying no. Well, there's a whole really great book written about it called When the Body Says No by Dr. Gabor Mate. And this is something that you do want to address. Why? Because the research says that conflict inside of us, I mean, sometimes we just do. I mean, I have done, volunteered for things that I'm like, oh, but I did. But that's not, there's not a hard and fast rule around this. But over time, if we're continually compromising our no for a yes, it does have health implications. So how do you feel when you're over obligated? How do you feel when you have said yes to a lot of things and you actually would rather not? If you really dug deep inside of yourself, you could see that this is my social conditioning because I feel like I should is always a clue if you're using the word I should. You start to see through what your obligations are and exactly when you feel like you don't want to let people down. You want to look at that. Because if not letting people down is one of our metrics for how we run our lives, the question is, are you letting yourself down? The question is, are you bypassing yourself or abandoning yourself because you're not because you don't want to let other people down? So you just answered the question. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. If we abandon ourselves enough times, we're going to pay for it in different ways. Because we might start not sleeping very well or sleeping too much. Your brain on overload with racing thoughts of like, oh, I shouldn't have, or why didn't I say no? Or simply avoidance. You just don't want to see people anymore because you can't actually say no. And that feels stressful. Like, have you ever had an email, that you've been avoiding for a long time answering? And you think, well, out of sight, out of mind, or a phone call that you haven't returned. It's never really out of mind because you go to open your email and you're like, God, I don't want to see that one. And it creates some stress. And of course, overwhelm and resentment is the biggie. Over time, we start to feel resentful of them when it's not always their fault if they haven't been told. So this is really a route um, out of victimhood in this particular situation, and out of blame, because blame is also a very stressful thing to do when we're blaming other. There are situations, if you can't get a doctor and you can't, there's things that are very stressful for you. That's different, that frustration. But if we're blaming other people because we're doing things when we don't want to do them, that's more of a me problem. And that's good news because you're here, you're learning, and you're going to have control over your me problems. So I get sick when I'm too afraid to say no. Okay. I think that's very important. Very important. We do accept suffering. Yeah. I'm going to really think about boundaries and self-care. Absolutely. We want to think about not only what we don't want, but what we do want. And that you can go either way, both or both. We can start thinking about what do I want to do? Even this holiday, let's just take the holidays as an example. What would be a perfect thing for me? What do I want to get out of it? What would be a perfect day for me? And start designing your life that way. Initially, you might feel selfish, or people might even say you're being selfish. And you can say, yes, I am. Yeah, of course I am, because that's good for me. And it's hard to argue with. People might argue with you, but often when you start looking after yourself, you show other people where maybe they're not looking after themselves. So if a friend tells you, like, well, that's being selfish, if you just look after yourself, maybe that's what they're not able to do. Yes, more along the lines of going with the flow to keep the peace. Absolutely. Yeah, just keep the peace. And, you know, um, you might feel or tell yourself, well, that it just feels easier to just keep the peace. Just feels easier than making waves, than making trouble or having to deal with it. And certainly when your resources, your capacity is low, you absolutely might not have the strength to make the waves or not keep the peace. But when you do feel strong enough to, I would really encourage you to start making small changes that are manageable. So before we start talking about how, well, we are going to talk about how. I want to talk for a moment about congruence, emotional mind body congruence. And this is where a lot of setting boundaries breaks down. This is something we're going to go more into because I can't do it all tonight. Um, Not this Wednesday, but well, a little bit this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday in embodied boundaries. So, I've spoken to many people about boundaries, and sometimes I hear, well, I told them, I told him not to do that. I keep on telling him not to do that. I keep on mentioning it, but it doesn't seem to be listening. So here's what you really want to notice. You can do this, you can practice this at home. Just what it feels like to say no, to just say in your own voice. You can do it now. Maybe there's nobody around you and you can just, no, no. And you could actually just move your hand as if you're placing some resistance, like you're creating a bit of space. You don't have to do this when you're saying it to the person, but you want to see how that starts to resonate in your body. Because it when someone tells me that they've been saying it, but nobody's listening, it tells me one of two things. One is that it's not really an embodied no. It's more like a high voice, like, can you not do that, please? It's not convincing. And sometimes we do that out of fear. We do that out of fear. So this first lady, you can tell me, like, you can kind of guess what her emotional tone is. It could be a number of different things. It could be like, what are you doing? The next lady, it could be, she could be saying no. She could be saying, oh my, really? You're doing that again? Or a surprise or a shock. Like it's an embodied expression of an emotion. So this guy right here, what would you suppose that he might be feeling? And this isn't telling you how to say it. It's just saying that their faces and their eyes mostly. Research shows that the eyes have the most impact, even sometimes over the voice. The eyes will tell you that he's maybe shocked or surprised or can't believe it. And then this woman's eyes at the end also, could be any number of, you can tell me what you think. Um, could be like, what? Shock or surprise. But each one of these faces tells us something. So if you are saying no in a kind of high pitched, trying to be nice voice, you might be missing the mark. And this is really what we're going to practice next week, of being able to say no, no, even a no, thank you, or not right now. That doesn't work for me. You don't have to go on with explaining or defending, or maybe you might say a sentence or explain it if you have to. But you have to be convincing to yourself first, and to other people. And you want to feel it in your body. So you're standing on your feet, you're sitting, you're in your body, and it's coming from your energy. And when we start to practice more embodied boundaries, life gets a lot easier, it gets more clear. We have more of a sense of who we are, what you like and what you don't like, and what feels right, what doesn't feel right. And you're taking up space. You're taking up your own space, saying, yep, that works for me. No, that doesn't work for me. This is me. This is me. Okay. Yeah. Reducing activities. Yeah. Yeah. Just be clear. I don't have the energy to commit to the activities. If people don't understand, that's not really a you problem. Um, it can be easier if the result is anger directed your way. Okay. Had the energy to stick up for myself last night. Woohoo. That's excellent, Gina. That's great. Easier if the anger is directed your way. It can be. It can be. And it also, for some people, can be exactly what they're trying to avoid, is to have anger being, and that's all, everybody's different experience with anger. But I'm glad that you made a move there regarding that. So another elderly parent situation. Yeah. So okay. So great example, Teresa, of the guilt trip. How many people have been guilt tripped into things? Glad you can see it. I'm glad you can see it. And when somebody is laying those pokes on you, ignore that completely and keep on. So if I'm saying, this really doesn't work for me this year. I am not able to make that dinner. It's just not going to work for me. Oh, come on. We always do that. We always do this. Why can't you? You're ruining it for everybody. Ignore it. You don't go into even defending yourself, because then you're being backed into a corner. You just keep going with, yeah, sorry. So anyway, do you want to talk about, and change the subject? Because you said your piece and it's over. Because we get stuck in the guilt trips, and then it gets all muddy. So if you find you're being guilt tripped, ignore it, rise above, keep going. That would be my suggestion. Hmm. That's interesting. If someone doesn't have a no, I can't really believe in their yes. Okay, well said. All right. So the cost, of course, is going to be your health. And I think this is something that everybody has to deal with at some point or another. Um, so I'm not sure I want to spend a whole lot of time here, but so maybe I'll just zip through. So the root of self-care, as I said, is boundaries. So who owns your time? Okay, who owns what you do? Who owns your energy? Um, who is owning even your mental energy? Are you thinking a lot about something in your spare time where you could be thinking about something else that feels better, more positive? And just paying attention to yourself, your own needs, is self-care. And saying yes, saying no, and saying yes. Saying no to other people and saying yes to your own needs is self-care. So you really start to have your own back, that you can start to rely on yourself, and you feel less tossed around in the boat out at sea in the storm. So let's just check in here. So two reasons that they might be hard to keep. Sometimes we're running on old programs. We're running on outdated beliefs or things that were learned in childhood. That, yeah, that it's selfish. You can own it and say, yep, it's selfish, or you can really realize that it's self-care. It's self-full. And if I keep on giving myself away, then there's no self left to be here inside of me. We may have learned it's not okay or safe to say no. So maybe there's situations you said no, and there was a complete backlash and it didn't work out well for you. Tuck that in the back of your head. Know that that's your programming. And now you get to prove something different to yourself, that, oh yeah, that happened then, but now I can do it. So if we've often been given caregiver roles to look after other people's needs first, when you have young children, of course you have to. There's a certain, and you can make time for yourself, but it's not always so easy, right? Elderly parents, you probably need to get some kind of system, some kind of other care going on, because you're also struggling. You also have to be looking after yourself, and either making it clear to other people they're going to have to pitch in, or they're going to have to pitch in money for to get some private care, maybe whatever it might be. You might need to raise the stakes a little bit, um, or speak to your elderly parent about what's going to work for you now, or you won't be. Caregivers are very vulnerable. That's a very high stress situation. And you don't want that to start affecting your health. So I'm a bad person if I disappoint people, I let people down. Somehow that means something about me. Um, you're allowed to disappoint people. You're allowed to let people down. You could put it that way. You could also flip it and say, I'm allowed to look after myself. And I can move through feelings of guilt that happen when I do. And I'll tell you that more you practice that, the more you get used to feeling guilty and you know that you haven't done anything wrong, the more you're going to build this muscle. It's like, oh, yeah, there's that guilt again. Yeah, that's what happens when I set boundaries. I haven't done anything wrong, or I can't disappoint me. They might leave me, or they won't like me. Well, I can tell you, your good friends and the people in your life that stick by you will stick by you. They don't like you because you're setting a boundary. They probably have trouble setting the boundaries themselves. Okay, so this is a big one right here. Might even be the last slide that we stop at. I've got a few more, but feeling like you can't tolerate your own or others' emotions. In other words, you're afraid of what the reaction might be. So it's like you throw something out there and then you kind of wince that, okay, I hope it lands okay. I hope that they hear it okay. I hope that they understand. I hope they don't come back at me with something. Um, and then when they do understand, you just breathe this huge sigh of relief. Um, and when they don't, it might be very stressful. So, what is the worst that could happen if someone does not like your boundary? Think about that for yourself. What's the worst that could happen? Good. I'm glad, Madeline. Yeah. What is the worst? You got to think this through because often it's a fear of something. That thing might happen. You know, I know people that have set boundaries even with their adult children, and the children have left their life for a while. Some will come back. I mean, things do happen. There's no saying that they won't, but you have to look at what the cost is on you. And we do show people over time how to treat us. And not, it's largely subconscious. It's not like you've done that on purpose, but when you start to speak up, you can ruffle feathers. Can be, it can be end of relationship. And it depends on, what you're willing to tolerate. Many people live in subpar situations for a long time and, accept a mediocre level of happiness or health or, and you deserve to be happy, you know. They will be angry. I might feel guilty. Sometimes we feel like we won't be able to survive it. When these intense emotions start coming up, I'm going to invite you not to take back your boundary. I'm going to invite you not to encourage you not to capitulate and to let it be for 24 hours. Let it be for 48 hours. Just let it be and breathe. See if it gets easier. I know you might keep checking your phone to see, have they replied, but to keep telling yourself it's going to be okay. This is the right thing to do. I had to do this. And sometimes just from saying it, over time, you will start to feel more relief. And it will get easier. If you feel guilty, it doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. That's from when you were a child. And we all have this, inside of us, I feel guilty and then you feel like you've done something wrong and you haven't. So, because that guilt's going to eventually go away as you get more and more used to this. So some relationships will end. It's already happened to me. Yeah, I suppose this is the biggest thing. And we are programmed, we're wired for a relationship. So that's not going to be easy. It just simply isn't. And and there might be so there will be some benefits over the long term. Now, I guess there is some weighing of how you want to move around grandchildren and grandkids. Um, and weighing the odds of the way balancing, what you're being clear in yourself, what you are willing to accept because you do want to stay in contact. And, where's the line? What are you not willing to accept and willing to take the risk? And how do you go about that? And every situation is going to be a little bit different about how you navigate that. Because changing any pattern is uncomfortable. It just simply is. But you can think down the line the consequences of not speaking up. A year, 2 years, 10 years. Maybe it's been 10 years already. And again, survival trumps everything. And so you may have learned that it wasn't safe to express how you feel, or that your feelings are not important, or that you don't matter in the equation. Or what's the point? The helplessness, that kind of freeze response. No one listens anyway. It's not very empowering to you, is it? Or we make excuses. Oh, that's okay. They didn't really mean it. I'll put up. I'm sure they didn't mean it. They had a hard day, but they've had a hard life. I would really look at that if that's what you're saying. And to stop making excuses for other people who know how to behave, and other people who have the power to be able to behave better. You can have higher expectations of people. If you're always the giver, are you taking away someone else's ability to give? If you're always doing things for other people, if they're capable of doing things themselves, then give them back their own power. So I sound like I'm kind of going hardcore tonight. I really want you guys to, by the end of 2024, to know that your days of being disrespected or being in situations that are stressful for your body are coming to an end. And you're going to navigate that in your own best way. If you are kind of feeling stuck somewhere, and you can't get out, you have, financially or whatever the reason might be, to make sure that you are having time where you're not feeling that stress, and gradually increase those times where you feel at peace, or you're starting to do more pleasurable things. You're starting to do things that fill you up. And this is where our inner boundaries come in. Do you listen to yourself? Do you hear what you really want, what you desire? And do you follow through on that for you? Or do you wipe it off the calendar because somebody else's needs came along? This is where you're going to start filling your cup. So we're going to start to minimize the leakages, and now we're going to start filling up. And sometimes it can help to really, 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 really start filling up, and then start to fill the leakages. So you can tell yourself, we're not doing that today. We're not going to be saying yes when we need no today. We are not going to be repeating all those negative thoughts, because now I'm going to shift into something that I enjoy. Today I'm going to pace myself. Today I'm going to make time, 20 minutes of relaxation. So don't set yourself up for failure, not like a New Year's Eve, 20 different resolutions and then nobody follows through on them. But just today, what can you really get an inner boundary around. Now, I remember when I was younger and I worked at Shoppers Drug Mart, and I just remember there was a yeah, another girl at the time that worked there, and she just said people know when they come to. She had so many boundaries that oh, I know. She said to Shoppers Drug Mart, I can only work Tuesday and Friday nights. That's all. If you want me, I'm available. The other thing she said was that, if people know that they have to call me and they have to give me at least 2 hours notice before they come over. And then she said, uh, when she goes away with people, she always gets up at 6 and does her run in the morning. And her friends just know this. And I remember it as a young girl thinking, you get to do that? You can actually start to carve out your own life. And it almost came like a shock to me. But I realized she was doing it. And so um, when you start to see these things and you start to realize how much power you and control you actually have, you can start doing it more and more and more. Maybe you can say, if people are coming over, relatives that don't treat you so well, but you're not quite there where you're able to say anything. Maybe you minimize the time that you have with them. Maybe you say, yeah, I can see you once over the holidays, maybe from 7 to 9 works for me because I have a pain condition and I have to be in bed by 9:30. That might be a way of doing it. So just a few things. Talking to yourself. Oh, nope, we're not over explaining or defending ourselves today. Talking to you. I promised I wouldn't go into that dialogue anymore. This boundary is not debatable, non-negotiable. You put your dishes in the dishwasher. End of story. So just a few other ones here. Um, Encouraging yourself to show up. We're not hiding today. I said to myself that I would show up, so I'm going to follow through on that. And then asking, what do you really need? Is another way, we're getting close to time here, is another way of, how many do I have? I'm almost done. Asking for what you really need is another way of shifting the dialogue. So maybe instead of saying, can you not do that? You can say, I'd really like it if you do this. It's more positive, it's more proactive. And it's also helpful for you to know what you really need. What do you really want? Maybe you just really want some peace and quiet. Really brings us into true connection. This is what I really need. I really need rest. I really need quiet. I really need to get stuff done. So I'm not going to go into different types of external boundaries tonight. That's something that we'll probably explore more, not next week, but the next week, I should say. So I want everybody to just for a moment, just come into your body. It's been a lot of talking about setting external boundaries around you, in your space. So just notice. You can even put your hands out. This is my space. It's my space. I get to say who comes into my space. I get to say how close they come into my space. I get to say, how that energy comes into my space. And when something comes into your space, you're allowed to, that's not okay with me. You're allowed to shift the focus. You're allowed to shift attention, say, not right now. That doesn't work for me. No thanks. Be really honest. Maybe later. Do you really mean maybe later, or is that just an avoidance that you're going to have to deal with later? Nobody has to go hardcore because the last thing, unless you're ready, um, but to really feel into it, an embodied no, practice saying it, practice what you're going to say, and feel it in your body. And one way to do this is just kind of stay in your body without going too far forward or too far back and being present with what your statement is will carry a lot more weight. You can start small. Pick your socks off the floor. Thank you. Okay. And then you can start building out from there. So Rome wasn't built in a day. Nothing has to change overnight. But hopefully this webinar has kind of given you some tips to start thinking that no longer fits for me. I have the right. Or I really want to do this holiday. I have the right. And with that, you start to take more and more control over your own life. And that's only good for pain. So Mark's going to come back on. And I just want to just quickly, I'm in the process of setting a boundary or breaking a pattern with my best friend. And it's hard. For some, I think friends might be one of the hardest areas. Ooh, been waiting for a response since Friday. Okay, hang in there. Hang in there. Stand firm. Pain is also accompanied by vulnerability. May be invited to a fun event, want to forget about boundaries, and part of it, absolutely. We often have had to give up so much. We want to just go ahead and eat friends out for dinner, for example. Sometimes those boundaries have to be shifted for our mental health and maybe deal with the physical consequences after. Yes. Yeah, that's a really good point that no boundaries are set in stone. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to say yes and then no. You're allowed to say no and then say, oh, I've changed my mind. I do feel like going. So don't be too hard on yourself. Yeah. Let me sure people move in and out of your lives all the time. That's just the way it is. Yeah. That's right. That's right. And sometimes we don't know what life will be like without that person. Um, maybe, maybe there's some freedom on the other side of that for you. Many possibilities. So, wow, okay. I'm looking forward to more of a discussion on this in embodied boundaries. That would be on the 18th, where we can actually practice together and we can practice verbalizing, feeling it, saying it, moving with it, and we can have more of a talk about it. Yeah, glad you're here, Andrew. Yeah. So thanks everyone for being here, and I'll turn it to Mark to close it up for us tonight.
Thank you. Well, I can't really add to that. I think you've just, such a timely, towards the end of the year when it really is a difficult period for so many of us. And I mean, you've just given us so much to think about, and I think very timely, and hopefully people find it empowering, and you know, yeah. So thank you very much for a really great webinar again tonight.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're
Hmm.
welcome. And I hope it gave some food for thought around taking your time, your energy, and your life back, and knowing that if somebody doesn't respond in the way that you would have preferred, it doesn't always mean that you didn't say it right or that you did something wrong. So really tune in to yourself, really tune in to what's working, what's not working, and think about what you want, what you need, especially with the upcoming holidays.
Mhm.
And hopefully life gets easier. All right. That
Mhm.
was a fast hour for me.
Well, thanks, Madeline. And yeah, good night to everybody who joined us this evening. Thank you so
Hmm.
much for joining us. And yeah, okay, good night.
Thanks. I'll give some heads up here that tomorrow at 10, we've got anchored nervous system regulation that will make you stronger for setting boundaries. Wednesday, we have Mary Ellen coming in to talk about how to communicate and set boundaries. So she's really good at that. Join us this Wednesday with Mary Ellen. And then we're going to end up on Thursday with some nice mindfulness, relaxation, and stretching. So if you're able to make these classes, I would love to finish off this year with you on a really good note. So, all right. Good night, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all your wonderful comments. It's your comments that keeps the dialogue going. So, all right. Good night.
Good night.